America. You know, I watched the TV news last night. You know, I got home and I'm looking at the stock market coverage, and there's somebody wrote a little banner underneath on one of the shows that said, "Is the crisis over?" And I'm like, "Yeah, new $1 million mortgages for everybody." Yeah. Don't be fooled by the stock market. Here's the point tonight. Do not believe the hype. An upswing in the market does not always equal health or even a recovering economy. We're going to have big downs and big ups for a long time to come. And here's how I got there. For starters, yesterday was Columbus Day. And while the stock market was open, the credit market wasn't. And that is where we need to see significant progress before anybody starts popping champagne with, dollar bills that, now it takes about 1 billion of them to equal one. Most importantly, yesterday's gain should not be encouraging because, when you look at it and go, whoa, almost 1,000 points, because of this little fun fact. Do you know when the last 4 biggest daily percentage gains in the stock market history took place? You ready? 1929, 1931, 1932, and 1933. For you young whippersnappers out there, that was a time we used to call the Great Depression, and we liked it. Forget about daily gains. Ask yourself, your grandparents, how was life back then? So tonight, America, here's what you need to know. The federal government is just so colossally bad at business. The reason why yesterday's market was so good is the feds announced they plan to buy stakes, whether they wanted to or not, the U.S. banks, in those banks. Well, that caused the price of those shares in the banks to go up. And so when they actually do buy the shares, which means when they take your money and buy them, it means now we're going to pay a lot more than we could have had we bought them Friday and zipped our mouth. Morgan Stanley stock shot up 87%. Guess who gets to get in on that deal? Now we get to pay 87% more just because we told everybody in advance. It was amateur hour. Brought to you by the same folks who buy $1,000 toilet seats and run the DMV. Do me a favor. Stick to just pointing fingers at each other and yelling at each other, boys, will you? Leave the real economic work where it belongs, in the hands of the free market. William Poole is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and former president of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and Peter Schiff is the president of Europac and author of The Little Book of Bull Moves in a Bear Market. Okay, Bill, let me start with you. You led the Fed in St. Louis, and you've been against this bailout. Why? I thought everybody was for it.
I was against the TARP program, the Asset Purchase Program. I've been in favor of equity infusion into banks, that is, government buying preferred shares or common shares in the banks. However, I had assumed, and the Treasury had been talking about that program as being voluntary. Now, it's not voluntary. The banks have been strong-armed into doing it. And I must say, the Treasury has no authority in the law, as far as I know, to require banks, any other company, to sell a piece of themselves to the United States government.
Hang on just a second, Bill, because this is something that I have not heard covered anyplace else. I have not heard this focused on. Everybody's so busy celebrating. But they forced the bank. The banks could say, I don't want your money. And the banks must sell them these preferred shares to the government. Why would they do that?
The banks were volunteered the way a soldier in the Army gets volunteered to do latrine duty. Yes, sir, Sergeant. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. That's the way this was done. And I find it highly objectionable that we are not operating under the rule of law. It sets a very bad precedent. It means that in the future, anytime there is a crisis, the government will have the authority to require a company to sell a piece of itself to the federal government. So, I think it's terrible.
Peter, let me ask you this, that begs the question. Is capitalism dead and fascism alive? I mean, when can a company say, no, you can't buy shares of me. I don't want to sell them to you.
Unfortunately, we buried capitalism years ago, and we've been talking about this. Nothing the government is doing is legal. They're violating the Constitution with everything that they do. But, Paulson said today about this plan, he said it was necessary and unprecedented. And he's wrong on both counts. It's completely unnecessary. And unfortunately, there is precedent for this type of monetary policy. They tried it in Argentina. They tried it in Weimar Republic, Germany. They're trying it right now in Zimbabwe. I got right here in my hand 100 billion Zimbabwe dollars. And if I spend it quickly enough, I can buy a pack of chewing gum. This is the road they're taking us down. We don't need liquidity in this country. We need savings. And the government is trying to inject the banks with all this liquidity so they can loan it out. But you can't do that. We need legitimate underconsumption to have real savings. All the government is providing us with is inflation, and we're going to get more and more of it.
So, Bill, you're a former head of the Fed. I mean, you're a reasoned guy. I mean, not like this Schiff dude over here. You're a guy who knows how this system works. Are we headed towards Weimar? I mean, how do you pump this much money into a system that we have been doing over and over again and still intend on doing without inflating our money like crazy?
There is an inflation danger for the long run. It's not a danger next year in the immediate future. And it is a worry. I don't think there's any possibility of hyperinflation. We're not going the way of the Weimar Republic or Zimbabwe. That won't happen. But there is a real danger that we will...
Why wouldn't that happen?
Because the federal authorities and the Federal Reserve and the understanding of the economics profession is such that that won't
No,
happen.
it's not.
I'm confident that it won't happen.
So you're saying we're smarter, Bernanke and Paulson, these guys are smarter than the central bankers of other countries? They're repeating all the same mistakes. They're no smarter. They're the ones that got us into this mess. And fundamentally, intrinsically, there's no difference between the money the Fed prints and the money the Zimbabwe government prints. It's all paper. There's nothing there.
I don't disagree with that, but I believe that this country is a far more responsible country than Zimbabwe.
Based on what evidence?
About that.
Yeah, I will tell you, Bill. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I would like to, those are valid long-run concerns, and we must pay attention to them, and the federal budget deficit is going to be a big problem in coming years. But I want to come back to the issue that is right at hand of managing the financial crisis, which is real, which is serious, which does need to be managed. But I believe that this step goes way beyond what is necessary, and going beyond what is authorized in the law is a very dangerous thing to do.
So, Bill, wait, Peter. Bill, how do we stop it? How do we stop people in the Fed? How do we stop people in the Treasury? The Americans have spoken out against this. We are destroying capital. For instance, try this little piece in. Everybody wants salary caps. Salary caps? Who the hell is going to run these banks? If you can only make $250,000 a year, I know that sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but it's not for people who are to run the biggest financial institutions on planet Earth.
Yeah. You know,
well, one thing that would stop it would be if one of the executives of these companies, one of these banks, the 9 banks, were to go to court and ask for a court injunction against this requirement. Then it would be tested in the court system. We have a very high integrity in our court system, and the case would be heard promptly.
I don't think so. You know, also the problem is this crisis can't be managed. We need the free market. You've got these cronies in Washington. They're like little kids with a chemistry set, and they keep on throwing these chemicals together, trying one thing after another. They hope they're going to stumble on a miracle, but they're going to blow us all up.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.